All right, so are you ready to jump back into the DeLorean? Because we are going back to Hill Valley.
Back to the Future.
You got it. You guys wanted a deep dive on Back to the Future Part 2, and you even sent in a critique that goes way beyond like the usual just plot summary stuff. So
Yeah.
this is going to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Buckle up.
It's going to be great. I love Back to the Future Part 2.
It's so good.
It's such a classic.
Okay, so we are going to analyze how the sequel stacks up against the original,
Right.
those iconic 2015 predictions, which sometimes are hilariously inaccurate.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll even dig into the characters a little bit and see if they hold up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
So, it's fascinating to me to revisit this film through your insightful analysis. I mean, we're not just watching the movie here. We're really examining, like, the choices, the complexities, and how it tackles this mind-bending concept of time travel.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. And your critique starts off by highlighting a big difference between the first film and the second film, and that is the stakes.
Yeah.
So in Back to the Future, Marty faces a pretty dire consequence. Fade from existence if his parents don't fall in love. That's a lot.
Very high stakes.
But in Part 2, the main conflict is about his future kids getting in trouble. Now, that's not ideal,
No.
but does it have the same punch?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and the critique prompts us to consider.
Mm.
Does this weakening of the stakes weaken the sequel?
Mm-hmm.
Or does it allow it to explore some different themes,
Right.
Because the original is really focused on family and destiny, and this one is looking at the ripple effect and the paradoxes of changing timelines.
Yeah, so instead of just upping the ante with like a bigger, badder threat,
Right?
they chose to explore a different facet of time travel.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
I think great.
And like, hey, messing with the past isn't just about life or death. It's about unintended consequences on a whole other level.
Precisely. And I think, to that point, you brought up a really great example in your critique. Remember that bar scene in the first film where Marty's facing off against Biff?
Butthead.
Yeah, exactly. And then in Part 2, there's that mirrored scene where Marty is facing Griff,
Oh, yeah.
Biff's grandson, in 2015.
Uh-huh.
So it's like taking the same scenario and giving it that futuristic twist. And it really reinforces that idea that, actions kind of echo through time
Oh, for sure.
and that the past and the future are really closely connected.
Yeah. It's like they're giving a wink to the audience, like, hey, we remember that scene, do you?
Yeah, like a little reward. You paid attention.
Yes, exactly. So good. I love it. All right. So we've talked about stakes. We've talked about these parallels.
Right.
But what about our main characters, Marty McFly and the one and only Doc Brown?
Right.
Your critique dives into both of them, so let's start with Marty.
Okay.
You raise a really interesting point about his character arc in this film.
Yeah.
It hinges on this fear of being labeled a chicken.
Right. Which is interesting because in the first film, he's not really afraid of being called a chicken. He seems pretty like...
Yeah, like he stands up to Biff.
Yeah. He stands up to Biff. He takes risks.
Right. Resourceful.
Yeah, very resourceful.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in the second film, he's really worried about being a chicken. So I think that's a good point to examine. Is that a genuine character trait that's being developed?
Right.
Or is it more of a plot device to get the story moving forward?
Right. And it makes him make some pretty impulsive decisions, right?
Like big time.
To buy the sports almanac.
Yeah, it's kind of a big turning point. That sets a lot of things in motion.
Yeah, totally. So I guess it's up to us as viewers to decide whether we buy into this character development or if it feels a little forced.
Yeah, and that's what makes these movies so much fun to talk about.
Exactly. Okay, so speaking of fun to talk about, let's talk about Doc Brown. I love Doc Brown.
Doc Brown, one of the all-time great movie characters.
He is fantastic, but the critique points out a very interesting inconsistency in his character.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. On one hand, he's constantly warning Marty, don't mess with time, it's dangerous.
Yeah, you're going to create a paradox.
Don't mess with the space-time continuum. But then at the same time...
He's the one who's like, hop in, let's go to the future.
Exactly. Like, wait a second. You're the one dragging Marty into this.
Yeah. It's a really good point. It's almost like he can't resist the allure of the unknown, even if it means putting them in danger.
Yeah. It's like, don't do as I do as I say.
Right.
This makes you question his wisdom a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely. It makes you wonder, is he a reliable mentor? Or is he as reckless as Marty in some ways.
Yeah, is he just as caught up in it as Marty is?
I think so, yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, well, this ties directly into one of the biggest changes that the sequel makes to the Back to the Future world.
Okay.
And that is the rules of time travel.
Oh, boy, yeah. We're going to have to unpack this one.
It gets heavy.
It gets very complicated. Buckle up.
Yes.
Yeah, in your critique, you really hit the nail on the head when you pointed out that there's a shift in how Back to the Future Part 2 approaches this whole time travel thing.
Yeah.
You know, the first film, it's pretty straightforward cause and effect.
Right.
Change something in the past, it directly impacts the present.
Mm-hmm.
But Part 2 introduces this whole concept of alternate timelines.
Oh, man. And I remember watching that scene where old Biff gives his younger self the sports almanac.
Oh, yeah.
And 1985 is like suddenly this dark dystopian world.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, hold on to your hats. Time travel just got a whole lot more complicated.
For sure. And, you know, your analysis was really smart, connecting this whole idea of alternate timelines to some of those theories in physics about the multiverse.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You know, like infinite parallel universes branching off with every decision that's made.
That's crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is. I can't even picture it.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
But here's what I don't get.
Okay.
If Biff creates this alternate 1985, how come he goes back to the same 2015 that he left from?
Right.
Shouldn't his 2015 have changed too?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's something that the movie doesn't really address. It's possible the filmmakers, you know, they prioritize the story over really strictly sticking to all the complexities of alternate timelines.
Right.
Or maybe there's like a deeper explanation in there somewhere.
A hidden meaning.
Yeah, we just haven't figured it out yet.
Not a puzzle.
Exactly.
But you know what? Even with all those little inconsistencies and questions,
Yeah.
you cannot deny that this movie is visually stunning.
Oh, yeah.
2015, with the flying cars and the holographic billboards and the self-lacing shoes.
Oh, yeah.
It's just movie magic.
It really is. I mean, the
Oh.
visual effects and the production design,
It's amazing.
they really created a futuristic world that even if some of it didn't quite come true,
Right.
it still like captures your imagination.
Oh.
It makes you think like, what if?
Oh, for sure. And they do such a good job of like contrasting those three different worlds, you know, the 2015, the original 1985, and then the dystopian 1985.
Yeah.
It's so clear how Biff's actions have just totally rippled through everything.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget that hoverboard chase through the town square.
So classic.
So good.
The hoverboard man.
I know.
It's like the symbol of the movie.
It is.
It's just like pure fun and futurism.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
I bet you wanted one so bad when you saw that.
Oh, I wanted one so bad. I'm still waiting for them to be real.
I know, me too. But your critique goes a little bit deeper than that.
Okay.
It explores the themes of the movie, particularly this idea of moral compromise.
Right.
And that all comes down to that sports almanac.
Yeah, the almanac, it becomes like this symbol of temptation, right?
Mhm.
The allure of using, you know, future knowledge for personal gain.
It's like the easy way out.
It is. And, you know, you remember how Marty, he initially wants to use it to get rich quick?
Yeah,
That's a very human struggle. I think we all kind of relate to that.
totally. Like, who wouldn't want to just know the winning lottery numbers?
Right, exactly.
Take a shortcut.
Skip all the hard work.
But then Doc's warnings about the dangers of time travel.
Yeah.
It's like they take on a whole new meaning, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about paradoxes and alternate timelines.
It's about ethics.
Yeah, it's about like playing God a little bit, you know?
It is. And Biff's transformation into this like corrupt tycoon in that alternate 1985.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what happens when you let greed and ambition just run wild.
Yeah, you can't just get what you want.
You got to be careful.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that even like seemingly small choices,
Right.
like buying a sports almanac, can have huge consequences.
Huge consequences.
Yeah. And speaking of consequences, the climax of part 2 is where things go completely bonkers.
Oh, yeah. Things get really crazy in 1955.
They do.
You know, you have multiple martyrs,
I know.
multiple Biffs running around trying to fix the timeline.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a masterclass in storytelling.
Oh, it's so good.
It's visually spectacular.
Uh-huh.
It's intellectually stimulating.
Keeps you on the edge of your seat.
You're really trying to keep up with all those shifting timelines.
It's wild, but in your critique, you also pointed out that sometimes that complexity comes at the expense of clarity.
Yeah, you can get a little lost.
Like, it's so much happening.
Right.
You
And-
can't quite follow it all.
yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But I also think that ambiguity is part of what makes the movie so rewatchable.
Right.
You know, every time you see it, you're like, oh, I didn't catch that before.
Exactly. You pick up on something new.
Yeah, exactly. Keeps it fresh.
Keeps it fresh. And then that cliffhanger.
Oh, my God.
Doc getting sent back to 1885.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
I know, what a way to leave us hanging.
Right.
And set up part 3.
It's brilliant. You know, it's like
Yeah.
classic serialized storytelling.
Yeah. Keeps you wanting more.
It really does.
Yeah.
And, you know, it reinforces that cyclical nature of this trilogy.
Yeah.
Where each movie kind of builds on and echoes the events of the one before it.
That's true.
So you're always like going back and forth through time.
It all connects. It all connects.
Okay, so we've talked about paradoxes.
Right.
We've talked about the stakes,
Moral dilemmas.
moral dilemmas, visual spectacle.
That whole shebang.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, Back to the Future Part 2, it really is such a fascinating film.
It is.
And I think, you know, it's a testament to how much staying power it has.
Yeah.
That we can still be talking about it,
I know.
you know, all these years later.
All these years later and still find new things to discuss and analyze.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it really is. And, you know, beyond all the time travel stuff and hoverboards,
Right.
what really sticks with me is that question of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the film really reminds us that even small decisions can have a ripple effect.
For sure.
You know, not only in our own lives, but like the world around us.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this movie more than just like a fun time travel adventure.
Right.
It's a story that makes us think about our choices
Yeah.
and, you know, the responsibility that comes with having the power to like shape the future.
Yeah. And it really makes you wonder,
Yeah.
if you had the opportunity to go back and change something, would you?
Oh, man, that's the question, isn't it?
It is.
Would you risk it? You know?
Yeah.
All those unintended consequences.
Or would you just leave things alone?
Yeah. Or would you just trust, you know, that the course of history, even with all its problems,
Yeah.
got us to where we are today,
That's a good point.
you know?
Yeah. So that brings us to our final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
For all of you out there listening,
All right, hit us with it.
if you had access to a time machine,
Oh, boy.
would you go back and change something in your own past?
Ooh.
Or would you like Doc Warren's leave well enough alone?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think you'd really have to weigh the pros and cons, you know,
Yeah.
the what ifs.
Yeah. What are the consequences?
What are the consequences exactly?
And are you willing to risk it?
And are you willing to live with them, you know?
That's true.
So, yeah, it's not a decision to be made lightly,
No, it's not.
but I think that's the message of the movie.
What's that?
The future's not set in stone, but, you know, our choices today are going to shape the world of tomorrow.
That's a really good point. Wow.
So choose wisely.
Heavy stuff. But that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding.
Right.
You know, we're not just talking about like, oh, remember that scene when this happened?
Right.
It's really exploring like the deeper meaning,
The big ideas.
the big ideas, exactly. And all of this is thanks to you and your amazing critique.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously, thank you so much for sending that in.
It was a pleasure to read it.
It was fantastic, and it was so much fun to dive into this movie with you
I agree.
and explore all the twists and turns and the triumphs and the flaws and
Yeah.
all the thought-provoking stuff that still holds up today.
Right. It's a classic for a reason.
It is a classic for a reason. So huge thanks to you for sending in your critique
Yes. Thank you.
and for joining us on this wild time-traveling adventure.
It's been a blast.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember,
What's that?
the future is never truly written.
That's right.
It's always changing.
And you have the power to change it.
So cool.
Awesome.